3,000 orbits of the Earth, a mission of 78.4 million miles. We are just less than 31 minutes away from the engine firing of 4 minutes and 39 seconds now that will slow the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second to enable the Soyuz to drop out of orbit to begin its entry back into the Earth's atmosphere, and a landing just 1 hour and 24 minutes from now on the steppe of Kazakhstan, 91 miles to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan, where Russian search and recovery forces will be awaiting the arrival of these 3 crew members who have spent half a year in space. Everything is in great shape aboard the Soyuz spacecraft. All the systems are checked out, ready to go. Just a short time ago, just a few minutes ago, the director of the Cosmonaut Training Center in Star City, Russia, Pavel Vlasov, who directs the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center, radioed up to the crew that conditions at the landing site are calm and peaceful. He described the air as fresh with low humidity and said, "The landing site has the smell of spring. It smells like freshly cut grass. Have a good flight home to your home planet." Those words coming from Pavel Vlasov, the director of the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center. At the airport in Zhezkazgan, the forward staging site for tonight's landing and recovery operations, a dozen Mi-8 helicopters are set to take off a short time from now. Most of them heading for the prime landing site to the southeast of Zhezkazgan. 2 of the helicopters to move to the midpoint between the landing site and the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan in the event of a ballistic landing, the unlikely event of a shortfall in the trajectory of the Soyuz back to Earth. And 2 additional helicopters will be poised in the vicinity. All of the bases covered to recover the crew as quickly as possible following their touchdown in their Soyuz MS-17 spacecraft. The 3 returning crew members, Kate Rubins of NASA, Sergei Ryzhikov, who's the Soyuz MS-17 commander and who was also the Expedition 64 commander during this long-duration mission aboard the International Space Station, and flight engineer Sergei Kud-Sverchkov are in the home stretch of their flight. Rubins, when she lands, will have logged 300 days in space on her 2 flights, the 4th most days in space by a U.S. female astronaut, behind Peggy Whitson, Christina Cook, and Sunny Williams. Sergei Ryzhikov will have logged 185 days in space on his 2 missions over this increment, Expeditions 63-64, and will have totaled 358 days in space on his 2 flights. Kud-Sverchkov is wrapping up his first flight into space. Some 5 hours ago, aboard the International Space Station, the 3 departing crew members had an opportunity one final time to say goodbye to the crew members who are remaining on board the station, now part of Expedition 65, that officially began with the undocking of the Soyuz from the International Outpost. They had a chance to say farewell to one another and then make their way into the Soyuz spacecraft, where they subsequently closed the hatches. Those hatches swung closed at 5:24 p.m. Central Time, 6:24 p.m. Eastern Time, after which the 3 departing crew members began a series of leak checks on their side of the docking interface, as did the station crew on their side in the Poisk module of the International Space Station. The 3 Expedition 64 crew members who are coming back to Earth this evening, Kate Rubins, Sergei Ryzhikov, and Sergei Kud-Sverchkov, then donned their Russian Sokol launch and entry suits, conducted leak checks on those suits, closed the hatches to the uppermost portion of the Soyuz spacecraft, the orbital module section, and configured all of their systems, conducted communications checks, and everything is in great shape for tonight's landing. At 8:34 p.m. Central Time, 9:34 p.m. Eastern Time, as the International Space Station flew over the Mongolian-Chinese border, hooks were opened between the Soyuz and the Poisk module. Springs on both sides of the docking interface pushed off against one another, and the Soyuz was free, backing away from the docking port to which it had relocated just a month ago to free up the Rassvet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the station for the arrival last week of 3 new crew members who made their way to the space station, that being Oleg Novitsky, Pyotr Dubrov, and NASA's Mark Vande Hei. The Soyuz slowly backed away. There were 2 firings of Soyuz thrusters and a pair of separation burns to maintain an opening rate and increase that opening rate from the International Space Station. The Soyuz has now moved to a position some 32 kilometers away from the International Space Station in preparation for the deorbit burn that will be coming up less than 25 minutes from now.
"25 minutes of thrust deactivation. Attitude is nominal, and the angle is currently 185.5.
The deorbit burn is scheduled at 11:01 p.m. Central Time. It again will be a 4-minute, 39-second retrograde firing, a braking maneuver of the Soyuz engines to slow the vehicle down by 128 meters per second, allowing it to drop out of orbit. Some 28 minutes after the deorbit burn, pyrotechnics will fire to separate the 3 sections of the Soyuz. The 3 crew members in the center section or descent module will feel the G-forces building up around them as they move through the plasma regime of the Earth's atmosphere. Once they exit the plasma regime, the command will be given to open up the parachutes 15 minutes before touchdown. First a drogue chute, followed by a giant main chute, and the Soyuz will be canted into the correct position for its altimeter to measure its rate of descent and its altitude from the landing site. Just a few seconds before touchdown, soft landing engines will fire, and the Soyuz will be home, with landing scheduled at 11:56 p.m. Central Time, 10:56 a.m. Kazakhstan time on Saturday morning. At the landing site, just a few clouds are noticed at about the 25,000-foot level, visibility in excess of 6 miles. The temperature at landing time is expected to be about 64 degrees Fahrenheit, an ideal Saturday spring morning for the homecoming of Rubins, Ryzhikov, and Kud Sverchkov. Again, the Russian search and recovery forces are ready to go from the Zhezkazgan airport. The various recovery team members, that includes embedded NASA personnel, are already on their respective helicopters. At the time of the deorbit burn, rotors will be spinning, and the helicopters will set off for about a 35-minute helicopter ride from Zhezkazgan to the landing zone, some 91 miles to the southeast. They will arrive in a sequential fashion, will begin to circle in a racetrack fashion around the landing zone, waiting for the arrival of the Soyuz under its chutes. After touchdown, those helicopters will land very quickly in sequential fashion again. The first of the helicopters will be down to erect an inflatable orange medical tent near the capsule, to which the 3 crew members will be carried in their chairs once they are extracted from the Soyuz and have a chance to sit in those chairs for a few minutes to get their land legs back. Again, they'll be carried in those chairs into the medical tent, where they'll be helped out of their Sokol launch and entry suits. They'll get into more comfortable clothing. They'll undergo a series of medical tests before boarding 3 helicopters, 1 for each crew member, for a 2-hour, 15-minute flight back to Karaganda, Kazakhstan, which was the initial staging city for tonight's landing operations. In Karaganda is a NASA jet and a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft. Those 2 aircraft will be waiting for the arrival of the crew members, who will split up at that point, with Kate Rubins boarding the NASA jet for a flight back to Houston, and the two cosmonauts boarding their aircraft for a flight back to their training base in Star City, Russia, outside of Moscow. Two milestones following the deorbit burn, and you will be hearing Soyuz Commander Sergei Ryzhikov through an interpreter calling out the duration of the burn and tank pressures and the delta V, or the change in velocity, as the burn continues for the duration of its 4 minutes and 39 seconds. Once the burn is completed, the uppermost section of the three-section Soyuz spacecraft, the orbital module, will be depressurized about 10 seconds after the completion of the burn. That will set the stage for its pyrotechnic separation from the rest of the Soyuz vehicle once we have completed the burn about 28 minutes after the deorbit burn, prior to the entrance of the descent module with the three crew members back into the Earth's atmosphere. Once the Soyuz has moved to a distance of about 120 kilometers away from the International Space Station, we are expecting VHF voice communications to become ratty and perhaps unavailable because of the distance involved in the geometry between the antennas on the Soyuz spacecraft and the International Space Station. It will be sometimes we get lucky and the communications hang in there, sometimes not so much. So we'll see what happens this evening. But once the Soyuz moves toward the vicinity of the landing site, there is a Russian Antonov 26 fixed-wing aircraft that operates as a flying command and control center, through which voice and data will be relayed back to Russian flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow. So we'll be standing by to see whether or not we hang in there with communications all the way down or lose communications. Don't be surprised if we go with a loss of signal for a period of time and then reacquire communications with the Soyuz as it approaches the landing site. As we've mentioned in our earlier broadcast tonight, this is an unprecedented period of human spaceflight activity at the International Space Station, with 14 astronauts and cosmonauts coming and going from the outpost in 4 different spacecraft over a 3-week period. This landing tonight is the second of a 4-act series that will continue next week at the Kennedy Space Center, with the scheduled launch next Thursday on a SpaceX Dragon vehicle, the Endeavour, of Shane Kimbrough, Megan MacArthur, Aki Hoshide, and Thomas Pesquet, as that multinational crew launches from Launchpad 39A at the Cape to rendezvous and dock to the International Space Station to expand the station's population from its current 7-person crew to an 11-person crew for a period of time, a short period of time, until the Crew 1 astronauts who launched back in November, Mike Hopkins, Victor Glover, Soichi Noguchi, and Shannon Walker, who's the current commander of the International Space Station, until they return. Their scheduled undocking and splashdown is scheduled for April 28th. So a busy time at the International Space Station. Air traffic control definitely is the prevailing activity for not only the station astronauts and cosmonauts, but for program officials and the international partnership as they make their way methodically, step by step, to ensure the safe launch and landing and return to Earth of all of these crew members in the continuing permanent human occupancy of the International Laboratory. To give you a sense of all of the vehicles currently at the International Space Station, you can see in this graphic the current configuration. The Soyuz MS-17, of course, undocked a few hours ago, so it's gone, ready for its deorbit burn to begin the trip back to Earth. The Soyuz MS-18 that carried Mark Vande Hei, Oleg Novitsky, and Pyotr Dubrov to the station a week ago is docked to the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. Also present, the Crew 1 Dragon spacecraft at the zenith or space-facing port of the Harmony module, soon to be joined by a second Crew Dragon, the Crew 2 Dragon, that will dock to the forward port of Harmony. And you see two unpiloted Russian Progress cargo ships and the Northrop Grumman Cygnus cargo ship also present at the International Space Station.
And confirm.
We're now 14.5 minutes away from the start of the deorbit burn. Again, a 4-minute, 39-second firing of the Soyuz engines to slow it down by 128 meters per second, enabling it to drop out of orbit to begin its high-speed return back to Earth. The Russian search and recovery forces that belong to the Russian civilian agency called Rosaviatsia are all at the Zhezkazgan airport. Those personnel all aboard Russian Mi-8 military helicopters with rotors about to spin up. The first of those helicopters to depart the airport for the landing site at about the time of the deorbit burn, some 12.5 minutes from now. Amongst the NASA contingent participating in Kazakhstan tonight for tonight's landing and recovery operations include Tricia Mack, who's the Director of Human Spaceflight Programs in Russia, Bill Spetch from the International Space Station Program Office, representing mission integration and operations for tonight's recovery operations, Dr. Natasha Cho, who is Kate Rubin's flight surgeon, a series of Russian nurses attending to the 3 crew members with their own respective flight surgeons as well. NASA Public Affairs Officer Courtney Beasley will be on one of the first helicopters down to the landing site, along with Bill Ingalls, NASA's chief photographer. Astronaut Drew Morgan is representing the astronaut office for tonight's recovery operations. A veteran of a long-duration mission aboard the International Space Station that launched on the 50th anniversary of America's landing on the moon on Apollo 11. Coming up on the 10-minute mark before the deorbit burn, everything quiet aboard the Soyuz vehicle. The Soyuz commander, Sergei Ryzhikov, seated in the center seat of the descent module, the centermost section of the three-section Soyuz spacecraft, flanked on his left by Sergei Kud-Sverchkov and Kate Rubins on his right. And there's a cutaway view of the descent module. Again, the crew strapped in, having checked out their spacesuits. They are clad in their Sokol launch and entry suits, soon to feel the first effects of Earth's gravity for the first time in more than 6 months.
But the power has been shut off to the sensor. Is that right?
Прошло после выдачи просвета, инструкции нет.
1 minute has passed, but the flag is still there. And we have, we did send the command though for the deactivation. And so power supply to the EKV is not being supplied, but you still have you don't have the flag. Is that right? Yes. And we confirm depot thrusters are firing, and we have like 20 minutes left. Copy. We confirm the maneuver, the SKD. SKD is minus 8 minutes. And on the right info, we're sending the command, and D9, Delta 9 is illuminated. Sierra 9 is illuminated. Copy, Sierra 9 is illuminated. Unintelligible. We copy.
Countdown clocks now hit the 7-minute mark prior to the deorbit burn. 4 minutes and 39-second engine firing to slow the Soyuz down and enable it to drop out of orbit to begin its trip back to Earth. Coming up on the 6-minute mark prior to the deorbit burn, just about 1 hour until touchdown.
Parameters before ESCA deactivation. I have the parameters written down. We have integrated GESO. We have the pressure tank 155 for the first and 157 for the second one. Prop is nominal. And 774. 774 is the pressure in the descent module, and for the tanks we have 18.1 and 18.2. Did you say 18.1 and 18.2? Yes, affirmative.
4.5 minutes now until the deorbit burn. Sergei Ryzhikov just a moment ago reading off propulsion parameters for the Russian flight controllers in Korolyov. Everything in good shape. The stage is set for the start of the journey home for Rubens Ryzhikov and Kud Sverchkov.
One minute till ESCA deactivation and everything's fine on board. We copy. Could you please depress? You can depress the transmit button during the thruster firing. Copy.
Flight controllers in Korolyov will be expecting Ryzhikov to provide continuous commentary of the progress of the deorbit burn so that his reports can match up to all of the parameters that the flight controllers are seeing at their consoles. In Korolyov, you're looking at a live view from a balcony camera overlooking the Russian flight control room. 2.5 minutes away now from the deorbit burn.
One minute to ESCA DETIG. On board, everything is A-OK.
Ninety seconds now until the deorbit burn.
We're getting close to 1 minute before ESCA DETIG. We copy. Escadé TIG -1.
Less than a minute before the initiation of the deorbit burn, the Russian Mi-8 helicopters at the airport in Zhezkazgan have their rotors spinning, ready to take off in sequential fashion, heading for the landing site.
Copy. Going to page 51.
30 seconds.
30 seconds to Escadé TIG.
Выбираем формат контроль, маневр.
Select maneuver or Escadé burn. Monitoring. Copy. Transmit.
10 seconds away, standing by for the start of the deorbit burn.
Copy.
Есть включение двигателя в текущем положении.
Escadé
Engine start, deorbit burn underway.
in
Контролируем ускорение.
current position. At 0:47, 0:48 seconds. 5.5. Delta V.
Change in velocity being reported now by Sergei Ryzhikov, the Soyuz commander. This is a 4-minute, 39-second retrograde maneuver.
13.8 over 30 seconds. And we're on page 53, working for the table. Copy.
Включилась подача O2.
O2 supply is activated from the gas analyzer.
Двигатель работает минуту. Собрали
1 minute, 26.2 Delta V.
расход в норме, параметры КДУ в норме.
KDU parameters are nominal. Propellant
Минута 15.
consumption nominal. 1 minute, 15 seconds, 33 and 0.8 Delta V.
The Soyuz continues to decelerate as planned. Now a minute and a half into the burn.
Escadé firing 1 minute 30 seconds into the thruster operation, 41.0 Delta V. KDU parameters are nominal. Copy, Sergei the second. 1 minute 49 Delta V after 1 minute 47 seconds. Copy. 2 minutes 54.4 Delta V. Copy, and that is nominal. We confirm the burn is going nominally. 2 minutes 15 seconds. 61.6 Delta V.
Two and a half minutes into the burn. About 2 minutes to go.
2 minutes 30 seconds. 68.9 Delta V. All parameters and propellant consumption is nominal. Copy. 2 minutes 45 seconds. 74.8 Delta V.
Three minutes into the burn, everything is going as planned.
At the specified time. At 3 minutes 83.0 Delta V, and all KDU integrated propulsion system. System parameters are nominal. At 3 minutes 15 seconds, Delta V gained 88.9. 3.5 minutes. 96.9. Propellant consumption is nominal. Copy.
Approaching the 4-minute mark into the burn, about 39 seconds left.
4 minutes of Escadere firing. LTV gained 109.9.
Принято.
All CADO parameters are still nominal. Copy. We're standing by
Принято, подтверждаем.
for main engine cutoff command in about 20 seconds. Copy and concur. 10 seconds to main engine cutoff.
Принято.
Command 124 Delta V. Copy.
And the deorbit burn is complete and reported to have been perfectly executed. Kate Rubins, Sergei Kud-Sverchkov, and Soyuz Commander Sergei Ryzhikov on their way home.
At 070613, KSDBO is open in a docking compartment. We have stable pressure at 744, and the pressure is dropping in orbital module.
And as planned, the orbital module, the topmost section of the three-section Soyuz vehicle being depressurized, this in advance of the pyrotechnic separation of the three portions of the Soyuz spacecraft coming up at 11:29, about 22 minutes or so from now. That will leave the descent module and the three crew members on their own with the heat shield in the direction of travel toward the landing site southeast of Zhezkazgan in southern Kazakhstan.
Фавору ЦУПу Москвы.
Favor Moscow. Favor are here. Right now, we're continuing to drop pressure in the orbital module. Currently, the orbital module pressure is 115,
Питание БИУС. Готовность БИУС.
and the docking compartment pressure is stable at 744. Copy. We can check the BIOS settings. Moscow, Favor, we cannot hear you. If you can hear us, the pressure in orbital module is less than 100, 97 currently.
Принято, Фаворы. Слышим вас хорошо.
In the blind, we are aware that we have to seal our pressure helmets at the 0720 or by 072355, no later. But we're planning to do so a little bit earlier at 0721-ish. Copy. We have you loud and clear. We have 20 minutes to module separation, and O2 supply is continuing.
Soyuz Commander Sergei Ryzhikov maintaining a running dialogue with flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center, reporting on Soyuz systems, the crew putting their visors down on their helmets, this in preparation for the pyrotechnic separation of the three sections of the Soyuz, the topmost section called the orbital module, and the lower section, the instrumentation and propulsion module, They will be separating soon. The separation pyrotechnics expected at about 11:30 p.m. Central Time. That will allow the descent module to fly on its own with its computers honed in on the landing site about 91 miles to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan.
Фаворы, ЦП Москвы.
Favorы, Mission Control.
Фаворы на связи.
Favorы are here. We hear you through the noise. How do you read us?
Хорошо.
We have you loud and clear.
Можем проверить питание БИОС, готовность БИОС.
We can verify BIOS power and BIOS readiness. Everything's in order on board. The pressure is rising a little bit on board
Принято.
in the docking compartment because of O2 being supplied into the cabin. Right now it's 7:48. Otherwise, everything is nominal on board.
Ну, проверьте наколенники, пока есть время.
And in 10 minutes, we're planning to seal the pressure helmets. Please go through the last-minute buddy checks. Verify that your straps are strapped in tightly. That your knee pads are positioned properly. Moscow, we cannot understand anything you're saying.
The Soyuz is moving further and further away from the International Space Station to a point where VHF voice communications is expected to become ratty, if not unavailable, for a period of time until the spacecraft approaches the landing site and begins to provide communications capability with the Antonov 26 Airborne Command Center, the fixed-wing aircraft that is part of the search and recovery forces that is airborne, flying around the landing zone to act as a relay station for data and voice back to the Russian Mission Control Center.
15 seconds left to module separation.
Проверьте наколенники.
Copy. Please check your knee pads. Make sure that the ODF books are, the hard copies are secured well. Moscow, we cannot understand what you're saying. Please repeat.
Everything quiet here in Mission Control in Houston as the voice communications begins to diminish between the Soyuz spacecraft and the Russian flight control team, simply because of the distance now that the Soyuz has moved away from the International Space Station and the location and positioning of the antennas on the Soyuz relative to the relay antennas for VHF communications through the station.
Фаворы, если принимаете нас
Or if you can hear Moscow.
до разделения. Наколенники.
Before module separation, please verify the positioning of your knee pads.
Страховочными фалами.
Make sure that the hard copies of your
Фаворы вас не слышим.
procedures
До разделения.
are securely restrained with bungees or straps. We cannot hear you, Moscow. We don't understand what you are saying. Just letting you know that we are aware that we have module separation coming up at 072955. Everything's still ready on board. Copy.
Sergei Ryzhikov reassuring flight controllers in Moscow, even though they cannot hear the flight controllers calling them at this point. They understand that we're within 14 minutes of the scheduled separation of the three sections of the Soyuz through pyrotechnics. This is Mission Control Houston. Based on the last report from Sergei Ryzhikov, everything going very well on board the Soyuz MS-17. The next major event coming up in about 11 minutes, the separation of the three sections of the Soyuz, as the descent module with the three crew members strapped inside will then fly free with its onboard computers targeting the landing site to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. This is an animation of the separation of those three sections. The orbital module and the instrumentation and propulsion module separate from the descent module that then enters the Earth's atmosphere, building up heat, repelling the heat through its heat shield before the deployment of a drogue chute and then the large main chute. We'll talk more about the physics of the chute deployment and the behavior of the Soyuz spacecraft once we get past module separation. Landing is still scheduled for 11:56 p.m. Central Time, 10:56 a.m. Kazakhstan time on Saturday morning. The weather reports indicate clear skies, very light winds, temperature around 64 degrees Fahrenheit. And with the completion of the deorbit burn a short time ago, the Russian Mi-8 helicopters are all airborne en route to the landing site. This is all very carefully choreographed and timed so that the helicopters arrive in a circular racetrack pattern around the landing zone shortly before the arrival of the Soyuz under its chutes. The separation of the three sections of the Soyuz will occur at an altitude of about 87 miles, all done by automatic commanding from the onboard computers, firing pyrotechnics to enable the three sections to separate from one another. In the center section or descent module, Soyuz commander Sergei Ryzhikov flying under the call sign of Favore. In the center seat, flanked on his left by Sergei Kud-Sverchkov and on his right by Kate Rubins. The landing site coordinates calculated by the Russian flight control team in Korolyov call for the Soyuz to be targeting a landing spot at 47.2 north, 69.3 east.
The pressure helmets are sealed, and the the avionics are activated. Is that correct? And you have the Rus handle in your hands, correct?
So visors are now down for the three crew members in the descent module of the Soyuz MS-17. Some 6 minutes away from the expected separation of the modules. Countdown clocks here in Mission Control in Houston ticking backward toward the expected landing time, just over 31 minutes from now.
Moscow Station. Separation of the modules is in 4.5 minutes. Copy, favore.
So a bit of continuing communications confirming the expected time for the module separation around 11:29 p.m. Central Time.
Передача отжата. Работаем, давайте там где-то.
Our push to talk button is depressed, and the transmit button is released. Copy.
Как нас слышно, Фаворы?
Favore, how do you read us?
Again, these intermittent communications between the Soyuz and the Russian Mission Control Center expected. This is a nominal occurrence because of the distance the Soyuz is away from VHF communications capability from the International Space Station as it prepares for module separation. We're about a minute or so away from the anticipated time for module separation. Russian search and recovery forces airborne en route to the landing site southeast of Zhezkazgan, everything continuing to go smoothly. The reports now in from the Russian Mission Control Center that module separation has occurred on time. The Soyuz descent module with the 3 crew members strapped in their seats in their Sokol launch and entry suits are barreling toward the landing site southeast of Zhezkazgan. The next major event some 3 minutes from now when the vehicle enters the Earth's atmosphere at an altitude of 100 kilometers. Once the Soyuz approaches the landing site some 15 minutes before touchdown, there is a intricate parachute deployment sequence that is triggered by a barometric pressure sensor when the vehicle is about 41,000 feet above the ground. At that point, the main parachute cover is first jettisoned by pyrotechnic devices and springs. This will pull out a pair of extraction chutes, which in turn pulls out the drogue chute, which in turn pulls out the main parachute. It takes about 20 seconds for all of this to happen. When the atmospheric pressure that is measured around the Soyuz reaches the proper levels, a barometric pressure sensor starts a timer that triggers most of the remaining events in the landing sequence. At an altitude of about 18,000 feet off the ground, commands are issued to jettison the heat shield and to open valves to vent hydrogen peroxide, fuel for the entry control thrusters, and oxygen in the life support system tank. If we're fortunate enough to get video of the Soyuz under the chutes, we may be seeing that white smoke that is the venting, the normal venting of hydrogen peroxide and oxygen into the air, so that the vehicle can be safed for landing without an abundance of hazardous gases remaining in the tanks when the soft landing thrusters fire just milliseconds before touchdown. The Soyuz now beginning to enter the Earth's atmosphere. This will mark the first effects of Earth's gravity against the bodies of the 3 crew members for the first time in 185 days. We're inside 23 minutes until the anticipated touchdown of the Soyuz on the steppe of Kazakhstan to wrap up a 78.4 million mile mission.
Unintelligible.
The 3 crew members in the descent module of the Soyuz MS-17 should be seeing the first effects of plasma, the fireball building around the spacecraft, where temperatures rise to about 2,500 degrees, ablated by the Soyuz heat shield. Soyuz computers also providing entry guidance to fine-tune the path of the spacecraft toward the landing site on the steppe of Kazakhstan. The spacecraft and the crew members should be emerging from this plasma regime in about 3.5 minutes or so.
Favor ЦФ Москвы.
Favore, MCC Moscow.
Flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center attempting to contact the Soyuz, but as expected, communications not expected to provide a response as the Soyuz descends in the heat-peaking regime during its entry back to Earth. Touchdown expected about 18.5 minutes from now.
Favor ЦФ Москвы.
Favore, MCC Moscow.
The Soyuz spacecraft should be emerging from this plasma regime about a minute from now, and as it approaches the landing site, communications should be established through the search and recovery forces in the Antonov 26 fixed-wing aircraft around the landing zone, serving as a command and control relay station.
Favor ЦФ Москвы.
Favore, MCC Moscow.
Favor, слышим вас.
Favore, we copy you.
Вид спуска.
Вид спуска АУЗ. Вход на форсажа 34-33. Перелетный пробок 9 секунд.
Принято. Плюс 9 секунд.
We confirm atmospheric re-entry with a plus 90
Сигнал 10.
Мисс.
Маршрут отбивой.
Принято. Самочувствие.
Отлично.
Давление лица.
Sen, how are you feeling? Great. What's the set pressure?
Принято. 772.
It is 772. Copy. 772 is the stop pressure. What's the max G load?
Максимально была 3,8.
It was 3.8.
3,95 оставить.
Принято. 3,95.
Maybe 395. We copy. 395.
Плюс уменьшается.
Проверьте ББ, чтобы ничего не помешало
Please
введению
make sure that the ODF procedures are secured. And once the seats are primed, make sure that you put the translation and the rotational hand controllers in the corresponding position. Discrete number is about 1 and integer 0.1 and the integer is 10. Plus 10. Affirmative. Plus 10.
This is Mission Control Houston. Almost like clockwork, communications reestablished between Mission Control in Korolyov and Sergei Ryzhikov, the Soyuz commander. The crew now out of the plasma regime. Atmospheric entry was a nominal occurrence, and we're standing by now for the opening of the parachutes, the command to begin the parachute deployment sequence. Time to touchdown, about 14.5 minutes.
Please tighten your shoulder straps.
13.5 minutes until touchdown. Parachutes should have been commanded to deploy by now. This is Mission Control Houston, 12 minutes until touchdown of the Soyuz MS-17 on the steppe of Kazakhstan. We fully expect that the chutes have been deployed by now, although we're still awaiting confirmation of that from the crew or telemetry. This is Mission Control Houston, and there it is, Soyuz MS-17 under its main parachute. And as we described before, the white smoke is the nominal venting of hydrogen peroxide and oxygen into the atmosphere right on time, right on schedule, with landing planned about 10 minutes and 50 seconds from now. Reports now from the landing site from the Antonov 26 Command and Control flying aircraft indicate that the crew is in great shape. They've reported everything is nominal on board the Soyuz.
The value inaudible. Don't worry, this is not a fire. Favor?
Descending through a cloudless sky on a Saturday morning in Kazakhstan, Soyuz MS-17 with Rubins, Ryzhikov, and Kudzverchkov aboard, now 9.5 minutes from touchdown.
Are you ready? Yes. 4.5 is the altitude on the info panel. One more time. 5 minutes past. Let's do it one more time.
Less than 9 minutes until touchdown. The Soyuz altimeter soon to be activated to measure the distance between the Soyuz and land and the rate of descent. All that information being fed into the Soyuz computers that will trigger the soft landing engines firing just milliseconds before touchdown.
Okay. Forward, the descent is Descent is in progress. Pressure is 411. COS 0405. Copy. Altitude 3890.
The beeping sound you hear is a radio beacon on the Soyuz spacecraft that is relaying its position back for telemetry on the ground. The Soyuz very stable. The winds are virtually non-existent on the ground at the landing site, according to the latest reports.
Put on the kneecaps.
Russian Mi-8 helicopters with the search and recovery forces and the embedded NASA personnel are now circling the landing zone, preparing to touch down in sequential fashion within minutes after the Soyuz lands. Those search and recovery forces maintaining good two-way communications with the crew on board.
Altitude 500 meters. Control altitude. Standing by for landing. Stopwatches are on. Just relax.
Everything's nominal.
Copy.
In the descent module, the three crew members have cocked their seats in the landing position,
Stable.
tightened their straps against their Sokol launch and entry suits just a bit tighter as they prepare for touchdown.
We confirm the maneuver and
300 difference
range
as
is
60 meters.
unintelligible meters. Copy.
Copy, thank you. We're ready.
Sandwiched between the launch of a Soyuz vehicle and next week's launch of a SpaceX Crew Dragon vehicle, Soyuz spacecraft is minutes away from touchdown on the steppe of Kazakhstan.
Past 1,500 meters.
One of the Russian Mi-8 helicopters now in view. That is the foreshadowing of you're being able to see the horizon shortly.
Copy. And
Copy,
the
I
range
confirm.
is
1,000 meters.
Just 1,000 meters off the ground. Some 2.5 minutes until touchdown.
Copy, 800. Copy, 700. Copy, 500 meters. Crew, get ready for landing.
Just over a minute until touchdown, everything looking good. Touchdown. Touchdown confirmed at 11:55 p.m. Central Time, 12:55 a.m. Eastern Time, 10:55 a.m. in Kazakhstan on a Saturday morning. After 185 days in space and a mission spanning 2,960 orbits of the Earth and 78.4 million miles, Kate Rubins, Sergei Ryzhikov, and Sergei Kudzverchkov are back on terra firma. At this point, the Russian Mi-8 helicopters with the search and recovery forces in tow will begin to descend one by one. First to erect an inflatable medical tent nearby the capsule, and then begin the process of extracting the crew. A view of the landing site about 91 miles to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan, Kazakhstan. Russian Mi-8 helicopters circling the landing zone where the Soyuz MS-17 touched down about 3 minutes or so ago at 11:55 p.m. Central Time, 12:55 a.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, as the Soyuz MS-17 is back on Earth with Kate Rubins, Sergei Ryzhikov, and Sergei Kudzverchkov. Confirmation now being received from the search and recovery forces that the Soyuz MS-17 landed upright. So the crew will be extracted from the top hatch on the Soyuz once a ladder is erected alongside the spacecraft. Again, you can see 3 of the Russian Mi-8 helicopters on the ground to begin the process of erecting this inflatable medical tent, to which the crew members will be brought inside following their extraction from the vehicle in a few minutes to sit in chairs to get their land legs back a bit once they are pulled out of the spacecraft. This is Mission Control Houston. Once again, the Soyuz MS-17 landed at 11:55 p.m. Central Time, 12:55 a.m. Eastern Time, about 91 miles to the southeast of Zhezkazgan, following a normal, uneventful entry. All of the entry sequence of events went by the book as planned. The 3 crew members in the descent module of the Soyuz, following the undocking earlier this evening from the International Space Station. They are back on Earth awaiting their extraction. Compliments of the search and recovery forces whose Russian Mi-8 helicopters are now landing one by one to move their way toward the spacecraft and begin the process of getting the crew out, putting them in chairs near the capsule itself so that they can have an opportunity to get their land legs back a bit before they're carried in their chairs inside the inflatable medical tent to get out of their Sokol launch and entry suits and into more comfortable clothing for medical testing. The 3 crew members then will be flown by helicopters some 2 hours and 15 minutes to the staging city in Karaganda, Kazakhstan, where the crew members will split up. Rubins boarding a NASA plane to fly back to Houston, with Ryzhikov and Kudzverchkov boarding a Gagarin cosmonaut training aircraft to fly back to their training base and their homes in Star City, Russia, just outside of Moscow. With us on a satellite phone from the landing site is NASA Public Affairs Officer Courtney Beasley. Courtney, you are down on the ground very quickly as well. Just within minutes of touchdown, we are looking at helicopters, not yet seeing TV of the spacecraft at the landing site, so fill us in on what you're seeing.
Rob, it's great to hear from you. As you said, I'm here at the landing site. There are still some helicopters touching down right now. It was an upright landing, and it looks like the crew has been waving to the personnel outside of the capsule. Our helicopter, the skies are as clear as they can get. We actually got a visual of the capsule 10 minutes before touchdown, and we were able to follow it from that minute mark all the way down to the ground. We were one of the first helicopters out, and I'm on the ground right now. They're putting the stand up, getting ready to extract the crew.
What was the flight like from your staging point in Zhezkazgan to the landing site? At what point did you pick up the Soyuz, and how was the touchdown? Could you see the soft landing engines from your perspective?
Yeah, Rob, the skies are clear. The crew could not have asked for a more beautiful day to touch down here and breathe this fresh air here back on Earth for the first time in 185 days. Again, about 57 degrees here, clear skies. We got a visual of the capsule about 10 minutes before it touched down. We were able to follow the capsule all the way down to the ground. The capsule did have an upright landing. They have the stand around the capsule right now. They've opened it up, and they're ready to extract the crew. We expect that Commander Sergei Ryzhikov will be first out.
And we should be receiving a video from the landing site from the spacecraft here momentarily, and we now have video, Courtney, as we watch the search and recovery forces surrounding the spacecraft. Give us a play-by-play of what you're seeing.
Yeah, Rob, there are two personnel on top of the stand right now. They are waiting to open the capsule up. They're actually starting to put up this medical tent where the crew will go for medical evaluation after they are extracted and get an opportunity to sit in those chairs for a few minutes. So right now we're just standing by for them to open it up and start extracting the crew.
Hang in there with us, Courtney. We lost the video feed. We only had it for a moment, so keep providing us with what you're seeing as recovery developments unfold at the spacecraft.
No problem, Rob. They're wiping off the top right now. Again, we should just be a couple seconds away from opening up.
And once the three crew members are out of the spacecraft, I assume that they've put chairs up near the spacecraft itself. What will be the scenario and the sequence of events after that?
Yeah, Rob, they're actually setting those chairs up as we speak. Two of them are already on the ground, set up just a couple feet away from the capsule itself. These crew members will be carried out by one. At that point, they'll get to sit down, kind of catch their breath from that ride down. They'll get to make their first call back to Earth, whether it's to family or friends, get to tell them about their trip home back to Earth, and they'll sit there for a few minutes, get a chance to recuperate, and from there they'll head into the medical tents for further medical evaluation. In those chairs, they'll get their first medical evaluation as well.
The choreography of how the search and recovery forces deploy the helicopters and arrive at the timing that they do is always very stark to me. Give us your impressions. This is the first time you have been at a landing. Give us your impressions of how this all unfolded from your perspective.
Yeah, one thing to watch it on TV, completely another thing to be here in person. The second we got the visual of the capsule coming down, about 10 minutes, touched down, I just had goosebumps, and those goosebumps have not gone away. It was so incredibly exciting. We were one of the helicopters on the ground, and then some helicopters followed us. I was actually able to dial in before the last helicopter had touched down. And Rob is going to start extracting the crew now.
Keep providing us with your visuals, Courtney. We do not have TV at the moment. We're expecting it shortly, but keep us apprised as to what you're seeing, who is getting out first, and what they're doing with the crew.
Yeah, Rob, there's about 4 personnel on top of this stand right now that goes around the capsule. That stand has a ladder for the personnel to get up on, and it also has a slide in which they slide those crew members down one by one. At that point, the medical personnel is able to carry them over to those chairs we were just talking about, where they'll get their medical evaluation, be able to make those first calls from Earth, and be able to recuperate a little bit before heading over to the medical tent. It looks like some pictures are being taken right now before they extract the crew, but otherwise, it looks like we're just moments away from Commander Sergei Ryzhikov coming out.
What is the timeline and the sequence of activities after the crew makes its way into the medical tent for their initial evaluations?
Yeah, so after their full medical complete, the crew will be carried over to the medical tent, which is a short distance away from where we are now. Those will conduct a more in-depth medical evaluation. The crew will also undergo a series of field tests. Kate Rubins, in particular, will undergo a test conducted by our human research program called Standard Measures. And that's just a set of measures taken after landing to characterize the effects of living and working in the microgravity environment. Once those tests are complete, the crew and personnel will head back to their designated helicopters. From there, they'll head to the airport in Karaganda, where Rubins will board the NASA plane back to Houston, and the cosmonauts will board their aircraft to return to their training base in Star City, Russia.
Courtney, hang in there with us. We're going to be coming back to you here momentarily. Just to recap, this is Courtney Beasley at the landing site, NASA Public Affairs Officer. She rode on one of the first helicopters from Zhezkazgan earlier to the landing site, where the Soyuz MS-17 touched down about 15 minutes ago at 11:55 p.m. Central Time, 10:55 a.m. Kazakhstan time at the landing site. It was a perfectly normal re-entry for Rubins, Ryzhikov, and Kud Sverchkov. All of the entry sequence of events were by the book. Everything went normally. The separation of the modules, the deployment of the parachutes, and touchdown occurring actually about a minute earlier than had been predicted. Almost a bullseye touchdown, with the Soyuz sticking the landing upright, which of course helps to facilitate the extraction of the crew. Courtney, what's going on there right now?
Yeah, Rob, it looks like those initial pictures have been taken, and it looks like they are moving down to extract their first crew member. There's about 4 personnel again on top of the stand around the Soyuz, and here we have it. Sergei Ryzhikov is now coming out. And some shaking hands, some high fives, and a lot of smiles on the top of that stand right now. He's turning around and giving the crowd a wave. So excited to be back home. And he's going down the slide right now. Again, the medical personnel right on the slide to carry him over to the chairs just a couple feet away. And they're starting the extraction for the second crew member as we speak. And Rob, in the medical chairs, they'll be seated in the same configuration that they rode home in their Soyuz on.
Courtney, we're standing by for the resumption of video from the landing site. And based on your report, Ryzhikov is out, and we'll be waiting for you to report on the next crew member to be extracted.
Yeah, Rob, we're just standing by waiting. It should just be a couple moments from now. Again, the medical personnel on top, ready to help extract and welcome these crew members home.
Courtney, sometimes at these landing sites, the locals who know as much about landing operations as almost the rest of us will show up to greet the crew members. Any sign of any locals?
No, Rob. Don't see any sign of any locals. That may just be due to the COVID-19 restrictions. And without video, you can't tell, but most people here do have on masks to follow those COVID-19 guidelines.
And we now have video from the landing site. We just caught a glimpse of Sergei Ryzhikov, and we're looking at the crew members being extracted and other technical personnel clamoring at the very top hatch that you described a moment ago. Ryzhikov is smiling, being attended to by the usual complement of Russian search and recovery personnel.
Blood pressure, 94. Heart rate.
Ryzhikov having completed his second flight into space, 358 days on his two missions.
176111.
Ryzhikov served as the Expedition 64 commander before handing off command of the International Space Station on Thursday to Shannon Walker, the NASA astronaut who will herself be handing over command to Aki Hoshide on April 27th after Hoshide arrives on board on the SpaceX Crew Dragon vehicle, which is scheduled for launch next Thursday.
And if you're looking at Sergei Ryzhikov from the front, our NASA personnel are to the left of him, ready to welcome Kate Rubins back home.
You're watching
Look at the top ledge.
live television from the landing site in Kazakhstan to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. Sergei Ryzhikov out of the Soyuz MS-17, awaiting the extraction of the other two crew members.
The crew commander. Parameters. Please do not.
On the right, carrying a bouquet of flowers, is cosmonaut Yuri Malenchenko from the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center. Presumably that bouquet of flowers to be handed to Kate Rubins after she's out of the Soyuz.
135 by 85.
And Rob, it looks like one of the personnel just went into the Soyuz to help the extraction process right now. And here's our second crew member.
Okay.
Rob, Kate Rubins is outside of the capsule right now, giving high fives and all smiles. And saying at Kate,
Here, right here.
welcome home. And here she comes.
And even 300 days in space on her 2 missions, Kate Rubins is home.
Lots of laughs and smiles right now as Kate is coming down.
Let's slide down. Okay, here. Hold her and let's go.
And she's being brought over to her chair right now.
Okay.
Okay, Rob.
Fred Harper.
Kate Rubins has been seated in her chair.
Sit down.
Again, all smiles
Great.
from both Rubins and our NASA personnel. And Kate Rubins now receiving flowers, a beautiful bouquet.
Yuri, thank you. Thank you.
Yuri Malenchenko handing Rubins that bouquet of flowers. On the left of your screen is Rubins' flight surgeon, Dr. Natasha Cho. On the right is a Russian nurse, Roxana Batsmanova, who operates every landing operation as one of the complement of NASA nurses.
And Rob, we just asked Kate how her ride down was, and she said, quote, "It was awesome."
Please step back.
So Rubins and Ryzhikov now out of the Soyuz, just waiting for Sverchkov.
Sergey, please move over there.
And Kate Rubins just realized Drew Morgan was here, so that was also a good reunion.
On a placid Saturday morning on the steppe of Kazakhstan, Sergei Sverchkov about to be extracted.
What? Pressure? No, oxygen. Oxygen 95.
And Sverchkov is now out.
The measurements have been taken and I will give it to you right away.
Rob, again, these chairs are where the crew will sit for a short time for their first set of medical evaluations, and they'll also be able to take their first phone call from back here on Earth. This is also a period of time for their equilibrium to get readjusted to gravity after living and working in space.
Okay, you ready?
And Sverchkov is now being carried over to his chair. So all 3 crew members now extracted and seated.
flight surgeon is taking measurements.
Man, it's fun to be on this side of things. Holy cow, dude, that was level.
Television continues to come in from the landing site where just 30 minutes ago the Soyuz MS-17 crew, the Expedition 64 trio of Kate Rubins, Sergei Ryzhikov, and Sergei Sverchkov landed upright in their Soyuz vehicle to complete their 185-day mission. You just caught a glimpse a moment ago of the nearby inflatable medical tent, the orange tent, that they will be carried into a few moments from now to begin medical tests before boarding individual helicopters for about a 2-hour, 15-minute flight back to the staging city of Karaganda.
Okay.
Courtney, I think we have you reestablished now. Tell us what the scene is looking like at the landing site.
Dr. Rob, well, as you know, all three crew members now in their seats. Kate Rubins having a conversation with the NASA personnel on the side. Again, she said that her ride home was awesome, and she just said that it's really moving on the side of things. So we're excited to do home. I know she had a great time living and working aboard the International Space Station. Again, they'll stay in these chairs for their first set of medical evaluations before being carried over to the tent. And Kate Rubins is now on the phone making her first call from back here on Earth.
Is Mom there?
Sverchkov, having completed the first mission in his career of 185 days that included a spacewalk last November with Sergei Ryzhikov outside of the Poisk module that served as an airlock for the first time for a Russian spacewalk. That Poisk module was the departure point earlier this evening for the Soyuz MS-17.
Not everybody's here yet.
And Courtney, even in the remote steppe of Kazakhstan, there's always time for a photo opportunity.
Okay. One more picture of the crew commander.
We should be seeing the crew hoisted in those chairs to be brought into the medical tent momentarily. For those just joining us, The Soyuz MS-17 landed at 11:55 p.m. Central Time, 12:55 a.m. Eastern Time, about 34 minutes ago. Russian Mi-8 helicopters carrying members of the search and recovery forces quickly landed in sequential fashion, one by one, on a perfectly clear morning on a Saturday morning on the steppe of Kazakhstan to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan to begin the extraction of the crew one by one. Ryzhikov was first out, followed by Kate Rubins, and then Sergei Kud-Sverchkov. And you can see the crew members now being raised in the chairs to be brought to the nearby medical tent. Courtney, we see Ryzhikov signing his spacecraft. Give us a quick glimpse as to what's going on.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, Rob, the group just took a big group photo with all of the personnel from Roscosmos and from NASA. Again, from here, the crew will be carried into the medical tent for further medical evaluation. After those evaluations are finished, the crew and personnel will head back to their designated helicopters, and they'll head to the airport in Karaganda, where Rubins will board the NASA plane back to Houston, and the two cosmonauts will board their aircraft to return to their training base in Star City, Russia. So, Rob, with the crew now headed into the medical tent for further medical evaluation, that will wrap up my report from the field. Rob, it's been an absolute honor to be here at this landing representing NASA Public Affairs, and we're all looking forward to seeing you back in Houston. Rob, back to you.
Thank you very much, Courtney, and have a safe trip back to Houston. We'll look forward to seeing you and hearing more about your trip. As we lost our television feed just a moment ago, you saw Kate Rubins being carried toward the inflatable medical tent, following Sergei Ryzhikov, the Soyuz commander, signing the outside of the descent module with the date of landing. That has now become a tradition for returning Soyuz crews. The three Soyuz crew members are now inside the inflatable medical tent at the landing site, just a few feet away from the descent module that touched down in perfect fashion at 11:55 p.m. Central Time, 12:55 a.m. Eastern Time, to wrap up the 185-day mission of Kate Rubins, Sergei Ryzhikov, and Sergei Kud-Sverchkov. There will be a period, as you heard from Public Affairs Officer Courtney Beasley, a period of medical testing inside the medical tent, after which the crew members will board individual helicopters for a flight back to the staging city of Karaganda, where they will split up, Rubins boarding a NASA plane for a flight back to Houston, and Ryzhikov and Kud-Sverchkov boarding a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft for a flight back to Star City, Russia, and their training base just outside of Moscow. This is Mission Control Houston. The successful landing, the very smooth and uneventful landing of the Soyuz MS-17 has brought Kate Rubins, Sergei Ryzhikov, and Sergei Kud-Sverchkov back to Earth after 185 days in space, a 78.4 million mile mission. Everything went perfectly throughout the course of the night, from hatch closure through undocking, through the deorbit burn and all of the entry sequence of events that resulted in an upright landing for their descent module, a bullseye landing about 91 miles to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. The crew is out of the Soyuz. They're in the nearby medical tent, getting out of their Sokol launch and entry suits, having an opportunity to receive initial medical testing before they board respective helicopters to fly back to the staging city of Karaganda, Kazakhstan, where they will split up, with Rubins returning to Houston on a NASA plane and Ryzhikov and Kud-Sverchkov returning to their training base in Star City, Russia, outside of Moscow. This is one of a continuing series of events in one of the busiest periods in International Space Station, if not human spaceflight history, where 14 astronauts and cosmonauts are coming and going from the station on 4 different spacecraft over a 3-week period. Next up is next Thursday's launch of the Crew 2 astronauts on board a SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft, led by spacecraft commander Shane Kimbrough on the right of your screen, Megan MacArthur, the Dragon pilot, on the left, and the multinational crew rounding out Thomas Pesquet of the European Space Agency and Aki Hoshide of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. They are scheduled to launch from Launchpad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center next Thursday, April 22nd at 6:11 a.m. Eastern Time, with NASA TV coverage beginning at 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Docking scheduled 1 week from today, actually from Friday, in the early morning hours, to bring the station crew temporarily to an 11-person crew. So we'll be following all of the countdown activities throughout the week with a series of briefings throughout the week from the Kennedy Space Center leading up to their launch next Thursday morning. In the meantime, you can follow and recap all of the events from this evening on the NASA television video file that's coming up Saturday morning at 4:30 a.m. Central Time, 5:30 a.m. Eastern Time, that will recap all of the activities associated with the return to Earth of the Expedition 64 crew of Kate Rubins, Sergei Ryzhikov, and Sergei Kud-Sverchkov. The crew is safely back on Earth, soon to be back home in Houston and in Star City, Russia. So we'd like to thank you for joining us throughout the course of the night tonight, and to follow all of the exploits of the expedition crews on board the International Space Station on www.nasa.gov. For now, have a great weekend. This is Mission Control Houston.
It's one of the best-kept secrets of space science. For transporting ambitious and hefty scientific experiments to near space. Though they're not as